Unbelievable twist. Janitor saves struggling woman never knew she was a billionaire's MOM. In a dreary, rundown diner on the edge of town, an unbelievable event was about to unfold. It was the kind of place that drained your spirit, flickering fluorescent lights, sticky vinyl booths, and coffee that tasted like regret. But today, an extraordinary twist waited just beyond the ordinary. The sudden, sharp scream of a woman pierced through the monotonous clatter of plates and the muted gossip of grim-faced patrons. A figure stumbled in, drenched in anguish. It was a young woman, her clothes tattered and her face streaked with tears. Her name was Emily, and little did anyone know, her tragic plight was interconnected with unimaginable wealth. The clues were there, swirling in every way. She frantically searched her pockets, her hands trembling like leaves caught in a storm. She looked around, eyes darting, desperate as if hoping the air itself might rescue her. Meanwhile, a janitor named Chuck stood off to the side, his scruffy beard and stained work apron making him blend into the background. He wiped his brow with a grimy hand, unassuming yet perceptive, catching the sorrow in Emily's eyes. He could feel the weight in his chest, a tightness gripping him as he watched this stranger unravel before him. Just then, the diner's door crashed open. A group of rowdy men barged in, laughter infectious. Yet they closed in around Emily like a pack of wolves. The room fell silent, paranoia hanging thick in the air. Chuck's heart raced. He couldn't stay silent. With a determined clenching of his fists, he stepped forward. Those men held a power he couldn't compete with, but the thought of Emily breaking down pushed him past his fears. He called out, "Hey, leave her alone." The men paused, startled at the challenge from a mere janitor. Whispers spread through the diner like ripples in water. "What a hero," one old woman said, while a man nearby sneered. "Who does he think he is?" But Chuck didn't flinch. He could feel the web of intrigue tightening. Who was Emily, really? Why did those men want her? Just then, a flash of bling caught Chuck's eye, a diamond ring, obscured in the chaos, sparkling with secrets. He couldn't shake the feeling that this young woman was more than just a victim. She was a piece of a puzzle he had to solve. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As tension thickened, Emily locked eyes with Chuck, hope flickering like a dying flame. "Please," she gasped, desperation etched in her voice. "I'm in over my head." The men exchanged glances, laughter gone, anger brewing. They stepped closer, and Chuck felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. Something monumental was about to erupt. With a cry of defiance, he prepared to shield her, heart thumping louder than the chaos around them. Around them, whispers turned into shouts, but what was Emily really hiding? Would the weight of her family's riches crush her, or could a simple act of kindness break the chains? Chuck was ready to find out, but the secret simmered silently, just waiting for the right moment to erupt. The air crackled with tension as the men moved closer, their intentions growing more sinister. Chuck's heart thundered in his chest, every beat urging him to act. He stepped forward, using his bulk to create a barrier between Emily and the approaching threat. Shouts erupted around them, shattering the uneasy silence of the diner and igniting a wave of chaos. "Get out of here, janitor," one of the men sneered, his bravado masking a hint of uncertainty. Chuck felt a flicker of defiance spark within him. Emily needed protection, and he couldn't back down now. Glancing sideways, he noticed the glittering diamond ring on Emily's finger again. Unlike anything he had ever seen, its brilliance contradicted her desperate situation. "Stay back," Chuck shouted, trying to anchor his voice above the swirling noise. Emily trembled at his side, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. Chuck peered through the raucous crowd, catching glimpses of others, each frozen in awe and disbelief. Who was she, and why did these men want her? The questions fueled his resolve, igniting a fire within. As the ruffians continued closing in, one of them reached out and grabbed Emily's arm. You think you can hide from us? He growled, his grip vice-like. Without thinking, Chuck lunged, pushing himself against the man while instinctively protecting her. They stumbled back as the diner erupted into chaos. Cups overturned, chairs clattered, and shouts filled the room, transforming the mundane diner into a battleground. Leave her alone. Chuck's voice echoed, reverberating off the greasy walls as he fought against the tide of aggression. The adrenaline rushed through him like electricity, lending him strength he didn't know he possessed. Emily gasped, scrambling to free herself from the man's clutches. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. Chuck, please. My ring. Give them the ring. She stammered, desperation punctuating her words. The ring? He hesitated for a heartbeat, his purpose faltering. It's worth a fortune. Just take it. Before he had time to process her plea, the man holding her yanked her closer, his face contorted with contempt. The ring? You think we care about some pretty piece of jewelry? Chuck swallowed hard, courage battling fear. What do you want from her? He demanded, pushing back against the tide of men. Enough. Just let her go. Suddenly, an authoritative voice boomed from the diner's entrance. What is going on here? All heads turned to see the diner's owner, a burly man with years of hard living etched into his face. Tension hung heavy as his gaze swept over the chaotic scene. The group of men paused, eyes narrowing. For them, this wasn't just a chance encounter. It was betrayal being challenged. The leader of the group looked at Chuck, then back at the owner, frowning. This isn't over, he spat, shoving Emily away with disdain before they retreated, leaving an echo of dread behind. Chuck turned, grabbing Emily as she stumbled. Are you okay? She nodded, but the terror in her eyes remained. No, they're not just tough guys, they work for my father. Shock coursed through Chuck. Billionaire or not, her ties were dangerous. Things were spiraling faster than he ever imagined. What does he want with you? Before she could answer, an unexpected sound filled the diner, a faint, ominous ringing from her phone that cut through the chaos like a knife. Emily's face paled further as she looked at him, fear clawing at her throat. It's him, I have to answer. The ring continued, each vibration sending a wave of urgency through the air, compelling her to respond. Would she confront her father's demand? And how deep did this rabbit hole go? Chuck could feel the weight of the moment bearing down as she hesitantly reached for her phone. The room went silent. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the truth to unravel beneath the thunderous clarity of that call. What awaited them on the other side? Emily's fingers trembled as they closed around the phone. The screen lit up, illuminating her pale features. Time seemed to stretch out, the air thick with anticipation. Chuck felt a lump in his throat, a desperate urge to shield her from whatever came next. He wished he could just smash that phone, end the nightmare before it even started. But he stood there, rooted, a silent sentinel against an unseen storm. Please, answer it, Chuck urged, his voice barely above a whisper, edged with anxiety. With a deep breath, Emily swiped the screen. The moment her father's voice burst through the speaker, the color drained from her face. Emily, he barked, cold and commanding, where are you? You know I don't take kindly to disobedience. Don't let him intimidate you. Chuck shouted, even though he knew it was too late. She had already turned slightly, as if trying to physically distance herself from the sound of his voice. The change in Emily was palpable, as if a heavy weight had settled over her shoulders. I was at the diner, she stammered, her voice wavering. But disobedience brings consequences, my dear. You understand that, don't you? He punctuated his words with a chilling tone, and Chuck felt a shiver race down his spine. This man wasn't just powerful, he was ruthless. Chuck's instincts screamed to intervene. He stepped closer, heart pounding. She's not going anywhere with you, he declared boldly, eyes narrowing. Emily shot a look at him, a mix of fear and disbelief. Chuck, please, he's dangerous, don't worry about him. Just tell your father what you want. Stand your ground. He wanted to believe his words, but uncertainty rooted deep in his gut. Is that the janitor? Emily's father cut in, nasty laughter rattling from the other end. You think he can protect you? Mockery filled his voice, drowning out her protests. It's time you learned your place. Shut up. Chuck burst out in anger, frustration boiling over. She's not your puppet. The diner buzzed with hushed murmurs as other patrons listened in, disbelief washing over their faces. For a moment, Emily's father was silent, perhaps taken aback. But the pause barely hung in the air before he retaliated. Do you think I care what some lost soul thinks? Emily, you're coming back home, one way or another. Over my dead body. Chuck shouted, frustration spiking, his fists clenched at his sides. He glanced at Emily, her expression a mix of fear and admiration. You have to fight for yourself, Emily. With determination flickering in her eyes, she resolved, you don't own me. I'm not going back. Chuck felt a spark ignite within him. They were connected in that moment. They had to hold on to that flame amidst the chaos. Understand this, Emily, her father's voice slithered through the phone, dripping with menace. If you're not with me, you're against me. You know what I'm capable of. You know there are consequences. The diner fell silent again. Chuck's head spun. Consequences? What could he do? He had no power against a man like that. Emily, he urged quietly, what do you want? What does he want from you? Tears brimmed in her eyes as she stared back at him, pain and resolve battling within her. In a voice just above a whisper, she instructed, Chuck, don't let him win. We have to find a way out. Before he could respond, a loud crash exploded from the entrance, shattering the tense moment. The door burst open, and 3 men barreled in, wearing the same menacing expressions as the initial group. Looks like fortune favors the bold, one growled, eyes locked onto Emily. We're here to collect. Chuck's heart raced, the world around him blurring into chaos. This was far from over. What did they want? And how would he manage to keep Emily safe? As the air thickened with danger, Chuck cursed under his breath. He had to make a choice, defend Emily at all costs or risk losing everything. In that moment, he understood the stakes were higher than he ever imagined, and time was running out. What would they do next? And who was truly pulling the strings behind this twisted web? Only time would tell. The clatter of chairs scraped against the tile floor, panic rippling through the diner like a sudden wave. Chuck stood firm, adrenaline flooding his veins as he faced the trio advancing menacingly toward him and Emily. He had only a moment to act. That moment was everything. Get behind me, he shouted, positioning himself protectively in front of her. He could feel the gazes of onlookers boring into their backs, horror painting their faces wide. The air crackled with tension, a storm brewing as Chuck's fists curled tightly, ready to defend the only person who mattered in that moment. Let us make this easy, one of the men snarled, a heavy-set figure with tattoos creeping up his neck. He cracked his knuckles, taking a step closer, threat evident in every movement. Just hand her over, and no one gets hurt. Emily's tremors intensified, her hands shaking against the cold metal of the counter. Chuck shot her a glance, urgency etched in his features. Don't be afraid. I want to let them take you. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes, but it was quickly dimmed by the looming shadows of danger surrounding them. Chuck, they work for him, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He sent them. The word him was laced with terror, and the name of her father hung in the air between them, like a poison spreading through her veins. Your father? Chuck felt his stomach drop. What does he want with you? Before she could answer, the man lunged, reaching out for Emily. In a split second, Chuck acted. He pushed her back and swung his fist, catching the man squarely in the jaw. The impact echoed in the shocked silence of the diner, heads turning like a chorus of surprised spectators. The man stumbled back, almost losing his balance, but regained composure, fury flashing in his eyes. You just made a big mistake, Janitor, he growled, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. Now you'll regret it. Leave her alone, Chuck shouted, his heart pounding like a drum. As the man readied himself for a deeper confrontation, Chuck couldn't help but notice the eyes of the remaining diners, filled with a mix of awe and fear. The heavy-set man charged, and Chuck braced himself. His instincts kicked in, but as the two collided again, it was apparent Chuck was outmatched in strength. A sharp jab connected with his side, and he grunted, pain bursting outwards like fire igniting a flare. Chuck! Emily cried, her voice slicing through the tumultuous atmosphere. Panic forced her to the edge, crowding in beside him. But he needed her to stay back. He needed her safe. I can't let them take you, he grunted, battling against the man. We have to fight. But then, in the chaos, the second man flicked a switchblade open, glinting dangerously as it caught the light. He grinned, a predator enjoying the hunt. This ends now, just like your pathetic resistance. Chuck's breath hitched. The situation spiraled. He felt Emily's elbow pressing against his back, her warmth mingling with the cold dread wrapping around him. With panic surging, he shouted, "Get out! Everyone get out!" The diner erupted into pandemonium. People scrambled for the exit, chairs toppled over, and terrified voices mingled into a cacophony of fear. In that haze, a figure moved forward outside of Chuck's line of sight. A waitress, a small but fierce presence, suddenly stepped between Chuck and the attackers, her eyes fierce with determination. "You'll have to go through me first." It was a small spark of defiance, but against such odds, Chuck's heart thundered. Had they lost already? Would they be able to fight back against forces that seemed so overwhelmingly powerful? The looming question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Just as Emily clutched Chuck's arm tighter, the third man made a move toward the waitress, ready to strike. Would they make it out of this alive? And what dark secrets would unravel if they failed? The answers were closer than they thought, shrouded in shadows and danger. The waitress stood her ground, a resolute barrier between the brutal intentions of the men and the terrified couple behind her. Her name tag glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. Megan. That small connection seemed to ignite a fire within her. "You're not touching them," she yelled, her voice cracking with defiance. Chuck stood frozen for a heartbeat, adrenaline roaring in his ears. He had every instinct screaming at him to protect Emily, but in that moment, Megan's bravery shot through him like a spark. If she was willing to defy three men, maybe he could too. The heavy-set man laughed a low, menacing sound that sent shivers through the diner. "You think you can stand in our way? You're just a waitress." "I'm not just a waitress," she shot back, and Chuck could see the resolve hardening her jaw. "I'm a person, and I won't let you hurt those who can't stand up for themselves." In a flash, the second man lunged toward Megan, the glint of his blade catching the light as he aimed to cut through her distraction. "This is what happens when you get in our way," he sneered. "Look out!" Chuck shouted, adrenaline propelling him forward. It didn't matter that he was outmatched. It didn't matter that he was just a janitor. The instinct to protect surged within him. He shoved Megan aside just as the knife swooped in, its blade slicing through air that felt heavy with anxiety. Chaos erupted as Chuck grabbed a nearby chair, swinging it wildly at the attacker. The chair splintered under the force, but it succeeded in knocking the man off balance. Megan recoiled but quickly moved to grab a ketchup bottle, hurling it at the man. It burst in a splatter of red, catching him by surprise and blinding him momentarily. "Go!" Chuck yelled to Megan and Emily. "Get out now." The diner was now a whirlwind of chaos. Chairs clattered, and voices screamed, blending into a chaotic symphony of desperation. Chuck spotted a mother shielding her children under a booth, while others clamored to escape through the kitchen. A loud crash rang out. The third man, snarling with anger, slammed his fist into the counter, eyes fixed firmly on Chuck now. "You think you're a hero? You're just a janitor. You have no idea what you're messing with." But Chuck wouldn't back down. "Maybe not, but I know how to protect the people I love." With a roar, the heavy-set man charged again, prepared to unleash his rage on Chuck. In that split second, Chuck searched for anything to turn the tide. His eyes landed on a metal tray. He snatched it just as the man barreled into him, armor-clad in rage. With quick thinking, Chuck raised the tray defensively, just in time to block the man's blow. Metal clanged against muscle, and pain shot through Chuck's arm, but adrenaline kept him upright. He had never fought like this before. It was raw and unrefined, but for Emily, for Megan, he would do anything. The fight raged on, every punch and every kick a desperate plea for survival. But just as hope flickered, the diner's door swung wide, the bell jingled ominously. An unexpected figure emerged, silhouetted in the sunset light, streaming in behind. Chuck's breath hitched. It was a uniformed officer, hand resting on his holster, eyes scanning the chaos. "What is going on here?" he demanded, voice steady and authoritative. For a brief moment, the diner's collective fear shifted to a glimmer of relief. And in that instant, the heavy-set man faltered, glancing at his companions. Chuck seized the opportunity, adrenaline surging once more. This was their chance. "Help! They're trying to hurt us," he shouted, urgency gripping his throat. But would the officer act before it was too late? And what awaited them once the dust, or blood, settled? Through the chaos, dark secrets remained hidden, and the stakes rose higher than any of them anticipated. Would help arrive in time, or was this just the beginning of something far worse? The officer took quick, determined strides into the diner, his presence demanding attention. Chuck felt a surge of hope mixed with anxiety. Would the officer back them up or see this as just another messy barroom brawl? Everyone back away, the officer ordered, raising his voice above the din. The tension hung thick in the air, punctuated only by the frantic breathing of the patrons. Megan's eyes darted between Chuck and the heavy-set man, fear and resolve battling within her, in a rapid motion. The heavy-set man jabbed a thumb at Chuck. This guy started it. Just a cheap janitor jumping into something he can't handle. His words dripped with contempt, an attempt to diminish the reality of the situation. The officer's gaze narrowed, sizing up the chaos. He could see the fearful faces, the scattered, abandoned plates across the floor, the ketchup-soaked chaos around Megan. "I don't care who started it," he said, his tone forceful. "Everyone needs to drop their weapons, now?" Megan, finding her voice once more, pointed at the man with the knife, but the tension was bubbling over. "He is not a victim," she exclaimed. But before she could say more, the heavy-set man lunged toward the officer, lunging for the gun holstered at his waist. "What the?" Chuck yelled, and his heart sank as he dove in front of the officer instinctively. The collision echoed like a thunderclap in the stunned room. The officer, reacting with the speed of trained instinct, wrestled for control, a struggle for supremacy erupting between them. "Stop!" the officer shouted, wrestling the man back as Chuck scrambled to help. Desperate moves ensued, and over it all, the harsh clatter of chairs being overturned faded into the background. "Get away from them!" Chuck hollered, grabbing a discarded menu and forcing it between the officer and the heavy-set man. In the turmoil, Emily stumbled back against the wall, fear permeating her thoughts. She could only watch her boyfriend and the officer struggle against brute force. The second man, still dazed from Megan's ketchup attack, shook off the shock, his expression shifting to one of simmering rage. "Bastard!" he spat, charging toward Chuck. Without thinking, Chuck grabbed another chair and swung, the wood splintering into pieces upon impact. "Keep fighting," Megan shouted, picking up a heavy metal salt shaker, determination shining in her eyes. It was a small act of defiance, but it fanned the flame of courage spreading through the diner. But suddenly, the heavy-set man broke free of the officer's grasp, lurching toward Chuck with a murderous glare. "You think you're a hero?" he growled. "You're just a target now." Gritting his teeth, Chuck prepared for the worst. In that instant, the officer managed to regain control, raising his pistol. "Drop it. Now." The commanding sound sliced through the chaos, but the heavy-set man hesitated, eyeing the gun and the fury of the crowd, the line drawn dangerously between predator and prey. Silence fell for a beat as the men faced off, breath coming heavy in the stillness, shocks rippling through the witnesses like a wave. Chuck's heart thundered. Would the officer pull the trigger? And then, out of the corner of Chuck's eye, he caught Emily's worried expression. A thought pierced through the chaos. What was at stake beyond this moment? Just as tension reached its peak, the diner door flew open again, this time with a force that sent gasps echoing. Two more figures stepped in, shadows shifting in the doorway. The added chaos made Chuck's blood run cold. Who were they? And what did they want? In a rush, Chuck's thoughts tangled in uncertainty. Was this about to spiral into an irretrievable nightmare? Only time would reveal their intention and the true nature of this explosive conflict. Would anyone make it out unscathed? The atmosphere in the diner twisted like a taut wire, ready to snap at any moment. Chuck's heart raced as he locked eyes with the newcomers, shadows dancing against the flickering neon lights. The officer's attention shifted, a fleeting moment of distraction that could mean life or death. "Get behind me," the officer barked, firmly gripping his firearm, eyes trenched with authority. Megan, clutching her makeshift weapon, hesitated only a heartbeat before positioning herself beside Chuck. There was no way they were going to let that heavy-set man take the upper hand again. The two figures stepped into the diner with an air of menacing calm. One was tall and lanky, a crooked smile twisting his thin lips, while the other, broader and muscular, scanned the room swiftly, their intention unspoken but palpable in the charged air. The heaviness of the situation intensified with their arrival, a storm brewing against the backdrop of chaos. "Looks like the party's just getting started," the lanky one quipped, chuckling as if they had strolled into an amusing spectacle rather than a battlefield simmering with animosity. Chuck glared at them, instincts warning him that the trouble wasn't done yet. The heavy-set man, eyeing the newcomers with uncertainty, seemed to reconsider his next move. Perhaps they were allies? Or were they here to make things worse? "Who are you?" the officer shouted, disbelief coloring his voice, eyes darting between everyone in the diner. Tensions catapulted into desperation as the power dynamics shifted before Chuck's eyes. "Just friends of the show," the lanky man replied with a mocking grin, taking a few strides forward. "We heard a little birdie about a storm brewing and thought we'd join." Chuck tightened his grip on the broken chair. The weight of the moment threatened to buckle his knees. Did they bring more weapons? Would they then turn the whole thing into an all-out brawl? "Stand down," the officer commanded, his voice a mix of authority and panic. "Everyone, I want you to suddenly." The heavy-set man lunged again, inspired by an adrenaline-fueled rush, shifting the attention and chaos abruptly. In an instant, Chuck acted on pure instinct, flinging the splintered chair across the room. It barreled toward the heavy-set man, connecting with him at the waist, sending him crashing to the floor with a thud. A collective gasp echoed through the diner, shock rippling through the gathered crowd. Chuck felt his heart leap. They had taken back some control, but it was precarious. Balancing on the edge of a knife, the heavy-set man struggled to get up. The officer swiftly maneuvered to keep a bead on him, sweat glistening on his brow. "Anyone else wants to play hero?" he shouted, desperation leaking through the bravado. The tall figure started clapping slowly, a sinister satisfaction in his eyes. "Well done, Janitor. But can you save everyone from what's really coming?" "What do you mean?" Chuck spat, trying to muster confidence as he tried to see past the threat, preparing for whatever was next. The second figure's gaze turned cold, and just like that, the atmosphere shifted yet again. "There are bigger players at the table than you realize. You've stirred something that goes far beyond this diner." Chuck's breath caught in his throat. Bigger players? What was happening? Before he could process the warning, a siren wailed outside, amplifying the horror. The officer swiveled, eyes flaring. "Everyone stay put. Now." Each heartbeat thundered in the silence that followed, the tension rattling every single nerve. Chuck glanced at Emily, her face pale, fear mingling with confusion in her wide eyes. What was happening? Who were these people? Just then, the heavy-set man scrambled backward, panic flickering on his face, realizing whatever game had just begun was far from over. What was he truly afraid of? And as the weight of uncertainty pressed down on Chuck's shoulders, he knew one thing. The stakes had just risen higher. Would they survive whatever storm was brewing, or was this just the calm before a much darker fate? Chuck's mind reeled as he tried to piece together the chaos. The sirens echoed in his thoughts, drowning out the frantic whispers filling the diner. He locked eyes with Emily again. Her lips parted as if to say something, but no sound emerged. The air was thick with despair and panic, a palpable weight that suffocated the space between them. "Everyone stay calm." The officer barked again, his voice a lifeline in the storm. He moved a step forward, but the lanky man's laughter cut through the tension like a knife. "Calm? Oh, you poor souls have no idea what's about to happen." The tall figure's gaze flickered toward the windows, excitement dancing in his eyes. The heavy-set man groaned, still struggling to rise, but the officer's gun was trained firmly on him, a barrier against the chaos brewing just outside. Chuck felt his palms sweat, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Bigger players? What did that even mean? He turned to Megan and whispered, "We need to get out of here. Now." But the diner door swung open with a loud crash, and in burst another figure. This one was clad in black, a mask covering his face, and an unmistakable air of menace. Gasps erupted around them as everyone instinctively pressed back against the walls, creating a large circle around the chaos at the center. "Get down," the officer shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. Chuck didn't need to be told twice. He dropped low, pulling Megan down with him as the diner erupted into a storm of shouts and cries. Bullets began to fly, then cracking the air like thunder. The officer unleashed a barrage of gunfire, trying to fend off the encroaching darkness flooding into the diner. Megan's grip tightened around Chuck's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "What is happening?" she cried, her voice barely reaching him over the blasts. "Just hold on," he yelled back, the chaos a whirlpool that threatened to pull them under. The lanky man, still cackling, seemed unfazed by the ensuing violence. "Stop shooting. You're just making it worse," he taunted, leaning against the diner counter as if it were all just a game. Chuck's heart pounded in his chest as he searched for a weapon, anything to defend themselves. The officer kept firing, but with every shot, more of their enemies emerged, creeping in from the corners, faces hidden. It was like a nightmare inching closer, shadows growing against the dimmed lights. Suddenly, the heavy-set man shouted, "Enough. It's too late for that." "What do you mean?" The officer's voice wavered momentarily, a crack in the facade of his authority. "In this world, you can't outrun your past." The heavy-set man's eyes blazed with something intense. It was fear, but also a resolve that sent chills down Chuck's spine. Before Chuck could process the implications, the masked figure lunged forward, a knife glinting in the low light, heading straight for the officer who hadn't seen it coming. Time froze as everything spiraled into chaos. "Watch out!" Chuck screamed, adrenaline throwing him into motion. Ignoring his instincts to flee, he hurled himself toward the officer, desperate to divert the impending doom. Just as the world shattered into 1,000 shards of sound and fury, a new voice boomed from outside. "FBI, hands in the air." The diner froze momentarily, tension hanging like a thick fog. In that frozen instant, Chuck's heart raced, fear and confusion spiraling. The heavy-set man's face went white, panic dawning in his eyes. Who were these people? And just like that, everyone's fate hung in the balance, teetering dangerously on the brink. What would happen next? Would the intervention save them, or was it too late for all involved? Chuck felt the world shatter around him, an instant of chaos, followed by a heart-stopping silence. The air shifted, thick with uncertainty. The FBI? How did they know? The masked figure froze mid-lunge, the knife hovering just above the officer's shoulder as they all processed the unexpected intrusion. The stillness broke as the tension twisted tighter. The lanky man darted to the window, peeking outside. "Damn it, this wasn't the plan," he hissed, panic creeping into his voice. People held their breath. The glint of fear in the heavy-set man's eyes turned to fury. "What are you waiting for? Get that officer before they come in here." He pushed himself up from the floor, wincing as he moved, desperation fueling his actions. But the officer remained focused, gun still trained on the masked figure, who was now uncertain. The overhead lights flickered, shadows playing tricks as the sirens wailed louder, and the tension crackled like electricity in the air. Megan whimpered beside Chuck, her grip tightening on his wrist. "What if they don't make it? What if they're here for us?" He shot a glance at her, trying to be brave. "We'll get through this. Just stay close." Outside, the agent barked orders. Everyone inside, hands where I can see them. With one swift motion, the masked figure retracted. "Let us get out of here," he yelled, but then the lanky man shot forward, a blur of motion as he tackled the officer, sending the gun spiraling into the corner of the diner. "No." Chuck's voice was drowned out as chaos rippled through the room again. The officer wrestled with the lanky figure, his shout of warning mingling with screams from the diners. The masked figure lunged toward the remaining gun with a speed Chuck couldn't comprehend. "Megan, behind me," Chuck commanded as he stood, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He had to protect her, had to make a stand. Gunfire erupted once more, the sound echoing like an earthquake. The officer, struggling, managed to shove the lanky man off him, rolling back into a crouched position. But now the masked man had the upper hand, knife glinting as he moved. Chuck's heart raced as he saw the officer's face twist in concentration. "Get down." The officer's command came too late. The knife flashed as it sliced through the air. In that split second, Chuck knew he had to act. He lunged forward, grabbing the closest object he could find, a ketchup bottle, and hurled it at the masked intruder. It exploded in a red spray, causing the assailant to falter. The next instant, the officer seized his chance and lunged for the knife, catching it and twisting it free from the masked figure's grip. Outside, the FBI agents were shouting as footsteps thundered closer. "Lights! Turn off the lights. A voice demanded. Chuck found himself keeping low, scanning the diner for anything they could use as cover. The last thing he needed was to go down now, in this mental and physical battle for survival. Megan tugged his sleeves, panic etched across her face. Chuck, we have to go? They'll keep coming. Not without a plan, he replied, but inside, doubts gnawed at him. Would this really end here? What's the past that heavy-set man spoke of? I don't know, but we can't let them catch us in the crossfire, he muttered, eyes darting to the door as if on cue. It slammed open, and a group of agents stormed inside, weapons raised. Everyone on the ground. Their demands fell on deaf ears as the chaos exploded anew, shouts echoing off the walls. The mingling sounds of fear, gunfire, and shattering glass filled the diner, drowning out all reason. Panic spread like wildfire as Chuck realized no one was safe. Then, from the chaos, he saw it a glimmer in the very corner where the unclaimed gun had skittered away, the glint of truth waiting to come to light. What did that glimmer hold, and would it change everything for Chuck and Megan? Chuck's instincts kicked into overdrive. The moment the glimmer caught his eye, adrenaline surged, pushing him to make a split-second decision. Ignoring the turmoil, he dove toward the gun, body sliding across the slick diner floor, praying he'd make it in time. He reached it, the cold weight resting heavy in his palm. The chaos roared around him. He could hear the shouts from the ongoing squabble between the officer and the lanky man. Megan crouched low, eyes wide with panic, frozen in fear as she watched him closer than ever. Chuck, what are you doing? She yelled, the urgency in her voice cutting through his focus. He risked a glance back at her, their eyes locking, and in that instant, he felt the electricity of resolve spark between them. With this, he could protect her. Listen to me, he shouted, bringing the weapon up, hands trembling but determined. We're not going down like this. The officer turned, a brief look of surprise flashing across his face. You shouldn't have that. He instinctively called out, but Chuck was already moving, instincts pulsing through him hard. Before he could think twice, Chuck stepped forward, aiming the gun toward the door. Everyone back away. I'll shoot. The declaration shattered the din of panic, the charged air suspended in a heavy silence. The incoming agents paused, eyes wide with disbelief, and suddenly the room was still. It was a shallow victory, but it was their moment, a chance to reclaim control. Chuck's chest heaved, breaths coming in ragged bursts as he fought to keep calm. The officer, still crouched from the earlier struggle, looked at Chuck, assessing him with a mixture of concern and authority. You don't know how to use that, he warned, but there was a softness now. Maybe this man recognized the passion in Chuck's eyes, a hope no one else had. I'm not letting them take Emily, Chuck stated firmly, glancing sideways at her. Emily stood, safer for the moment behind him, rising from the terror of the masked man. At the edge of the diner, the lanky man smirked, brushing dirt off his clothing as he regained composure. It's cute, but you're in over your head, Janitor, he taunted, but the bravado had ebbed away, revealing the tension beneath. Shadows flickered on his face as the other man grimaced, slowly inching closer with calculated movements. Just back off, Chuck shouted, finger itching on the trigger, determination lighting his expression. A part of him knew how dangerous this standoff was. Too many lives were in the balance, but Emily needed him. Against all odds, they had found a spark of strength, and it anchored him deeply. The unfamiliar noise of sirens grew louder outside, the weight of impending choices hanging thick in the air. They'll come for you. You know, the heavy-set man shouted, unable to help himself, fueled by desperation. It's not just about you anymore. Chuck felt the words sink into his chest like lead. What do you mean? He pressed, brow furrowed with confusion. But there was no time. The masked man darted through the door with a sudden leap, shouting, Go! Go! Chaos erupted again, bullets flying, agents shouting demands, flickers of light strobed through chaos. The heavy-set man lunged, grabbing the officer, a cruel smile spreading across his face, and in an instant, violence shattered the fray. Chuck! Emily screamed, but the noise erupted like a tidal wave. The officer struggled, the lanky man drew a gun of his own, and Chuck's resolve slithered into oblivion. But he couldn't retreat now. Get out of here. Megan, Emily, go, he shouted, voice raw. The women exchanged a look, uncertainty dancing between them, but there was no time for hesitation. In a flash, they scrambled toward the back exit, and Chuck turned back to the scene, heart hammering against fear. He felt a weight lift as he watched them disappear safely behind the kitchen door. They would be okay. Maybe. But wouldn't they? The realization pressed down, breathless urgency crashing through him as he steadied his grip. With no choice, he turned to face the men charging toward him once more. Determination burning in his gut. He was only a janitor, yes, but in that moment, he was so much more. He wouldn't let them take anything away from him. Time slowed as chaos swirled. The world around him seemed to blur, and he could hear the reinforcements arriving. The heavy footsteps crushed behind him then. Like thunder, a wall of officers rushed in with wild urgency. FBI, hands up, they bellowed, flooding the diner, and Chuck watched as the masked figure faltered, panic scrapping across his brow. Stop right there. The officer called again, his voice commanding attention in that breathless moment. Chuck found clarity in the storm. The reality of his surroundings soaked through him, and every struggling, chaotic moment fell away as he exhaled deep. This was it. With a burst of raw courage, he stepped forward with the gun still trained toward the heavy-set man and the lanky companion, stepping closer alongside the officer who had fought for everyone's safety. You want her? He shouted, voice steady. You'll have to go through all of us first. The fear no longer gripped him. This time, they would all stand together as the room buzzed with tension, a new resolve stitched together every heart in that diner. Chuck, Emily, Megan, and the brave officer, their fates entwined in a battle against darkness. They could face whatever awaited them. But first, they had to survive. The air crackled, and hope flickered because together, they could defeat the storm that haunted them. And with that, their fight was just beginning. Each heartbeat transcending the chaos, a powerful chorus signaling their defiance. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss out on the next heart-stopping chapter. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this shocking conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling finale. Your support makes all the difference.